This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a church big mandate. Get on and welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark Garrigus. Where, Mark?
New York City, coming straight to you, trying to finish this and get on the road before the giant winter storm.
You flying big boy?
Yeah, I'm going to get the heck out of here. It's a little too cold, I'll tell you. It's inclement weather, and I'm done for the week. I was telling Gary yesterday, I finished a closing argument late yesterday by Zoom, which I think is my first closing argument by Zoom. And then I'm headed down to National Trial Lawyers next week in Florida. So a busy week next week as well.
Well, I know you have some thoughts about the Supreme Court and Breyer stepping down.
I've heard that you have an opinion on this. Is that true?
Well, I don't like affirmative action picks on jobs that matter. So that's my take. I don't mind the receptionists at the law firm, but I don't want the Supreme Court or the Vice President of the United States to be affirmative action picks, but I don't want commercial airline pilots to be affirmative action picks. Although I know you made one with Ricardo on your plane. But the point is, no, my thing is I want everyone to be included because I would like the best, vice president or the best Supreme Court justice or the best airline pilot. That's the way I roll. It strikes me. Here's an interesting thought. You ready?
I am.
The left.
I knew I would get a reaction, I should say, by asking.
Well, think about this sort of globally, right? Just think about it globally, which is if you're on the right, you go, well, I need to hire people that think like I think, or I need to appoint people who think like I think, so if the vice president or Supreme Court, whatever that is, Secretary of Transportation, I need someone who thinks like I think, right? But the left does a thing where they go, I need someone who thinks like I think and is gay. And now we've limited the pool. You know what I mean? Or thinks like I think, but is black and female. So now we've limited the pool. And imagine if you were going up against a law firm and your edict for your law firm hiring was, we're hiring the best. They just have to be Garagos material. And the other law firm was like, well, we're not hiring all the best and the brightest because we need some Eskimos. Don't you think you would have a tactical advantage over that law firm?
Well, look. Let's go through some of these candidates first, and I'll give you my opinions. The one from Justice Kroger, who I think I'm pronouncing that correct, who's on the California Supreme Court, shares an alma mater with Drew, went to Polytechnic in Pasadena.
Wow.
And a little fun fact, and is extremely accomplished under any circumstances. She's got quite a career, quite a pedigree, and kind of fits the mold for U.S. Supreme Court in that generally they are Ivy League types who rarely, if ever, I was telling this to Gary yesterday, rarely, if ever, do you see trial lawyers appointed. I saw a tweet today. Somebody had said, is it too much to ask for somebody to have actually tried a jury trial to be on the U.S. Supreme Court? And you just don't find that. I saw people tweeting about Justice Amy Coney Barrett that she's never argued a case or tried a case to a jury. The other candidate who looks like a leading contender is extremely accomplished as well. I believe is on the DC circuit, which everybody always refers to colloquially as like the little Supreme Court. And she's got, I believe she clerked for Justice Breyer, also has got an extremely accomplished background as well. But all of this controversy then kind of spurred a memory that I'm old enough to remember that the last female African-American justice on the California Supreme Court who was bandied about for the U.S. Supreme Court, she never got there, was Janice Brown, who I did argue a case in front of. She was, I believe, Gary could probably look this up. What I want to say, probably 2002 or 3. And she was filibustered, I believe, by the current president when he was in the Senate, when she was appointed or going to be appointed to the DC Circuit Court, which everybody always kind of views as a stepping stone to the U.S. Supreme Court. The interesting thing about that is you've got two justices who are bandied about, but who are, one is considered a Republican or right-leaning, and the other is not, because Justice Kroger was connected or worked for the Obama administration. And so at the end of the day, what you're really doing, I think, what's happening here is it's obvious that for people who say you don't want to play politics with the court it's already all about politics. I don't know how you get around that.
Well, I just thought popped in my head, but it would have been interesting, at least, if Trump had nominated a conservative black woman as a Supreme Court nomination. So you now take a lot of the wind out of the sail of we need someone who looks like us up there or who represents America. And then you get into a more clarifying discussion, which is when people say we need someone that looks like us, they really mean someone who looks like us who thinks like us. They never really finish the rest of the sentence. But that would have been a funny power move for Trump to find, Candace Owens type and select her. And then good luck to the Democrats trying to call her a racist or misogynistic or whatever they're going to label the candidate as. You'd have to do that to the face of a black woman.
Well, the Ronald Reagan, I think, famously appointed Sandra Day O'Connor, did he not? Which was the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court, and I think had made the promise that he was going to do that. So it would have been for Trump to have done it. You could see who he might or might not. One of the other candidates that has been bandied about is a district court judge in South Carolina. And that, talk about politics, that is a judge who has the backing of the representative in South Carolina who famously endorsed Biden prior to the primary and is attributed or credited with turning around Biden's campaign. That would be Representative Clyburn. And he has, I think the reason people think she's given serious consideration because she's got Clyburn's backing, but she's also on the district court, not at a circuit court level, and that tends to be a heavier lift, so to speak. But you do make kind of an interesting point in terms of the power move, because then that kind of forces. I saw something today where I believe Dick Durbin, who is the senator from Illinois, who's high up in the Democratic seniority. Back when the Republicans were talking about appointing Miguel, I believe it was Estrada, there was a memo that he had said that was very dangerous because he was Hispanic, meaning that they would have had a tough time, kind of going against it. So for those who think there aren't political crosswinds going on here, I think it's somewhat naive, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think they're trying to learn a lesson from the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing, which is she hung on. Now, to be fair to her, everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. So why would she retire before the election if the common knowledge was Hillary Clinton's going to win the election? But she hung on and Trump won the election and then she died. And I think people were angry at her for doing that. So this is really a way to sidestep that situation again. But it's going to just be a push because it'll be a progressive-leaning judge replaced by a progressive-leaning judge. So it's probably not going to change any of the balance in the courtroom. Is that the general thought?
That's the general consensus. I've talked to you about my 3-3-3 theory, which lately has not really panned out with as much accuracy as you would hope. But clearly, Breyer and Sotomayor and Elena Kagan comprise kind of what people call the liberal wing or the progressive wing of the court, as opposed to the other six. Although you see periodically Justice Roberts kind of going back and forth, usually when he wants to kind of slow down more broad pronouncements and make it more incremental is kind of the common theory there. It'll be interesting, though. People don't talk about it. The ages of some of the others. I mean, Clarence Thomas, I don't know how old is he, and Alito, I believe, is in his 70s as well. So you have some people who are not exactly youngsters.
Where did Breyer come down with the vax mandate stuff? It came out pro-vax mandate, I'm assuming?
I believe so on those two opinions. He was in the majority on the one and the minority in the other. So they came down in different splitting. They upheld it on the one grounds and they overturned it on the other. So it's kind of, it's interesting. In fact, there's now a lower court decision, two of them this past week, which may make its way up there. One of which I thought was interesting, which was I believe it was out of Pennsylvania, where a state court judge ruled that this kind of endless emergency, the argument we've been making in California, but only got traction at the trial level and got reversed, that this endless emergency, you can't just delegate your powers as a politician to an unelected bureaucrat, which has been the argument. And what are we almost getting to our second anniversary of the endless emergency?
Yeah, we have Barbara Ferrer, who's not only an unelected bureaucrat, but just a hand-wringing witch who's not going to let this thing fucking go. And then we have to be subject to her retarded whims. So that's... Well,
have you commented on ACS about the latest, which is I believe that Gary saw this yesterday, brought it to my attention, the handing out of masks to everybody at SoFi Stadium?
Yeah, and let me just say anecdotally, although it's all you need to know, I was at the stadium 2 weeks ago, a little bit less than 2 weeks ago, with Sonny and a friend of his, and they were checking the vax passports on the way in, although you just kind of wave your phone at them and they just sort of wave you past. But once you got in, they had people, interestingly enough, walking around holding signs that said, put your mask on. But the second you got to your seats, everyone's masks were off. And every 30 seconds, when the Rams were on defense, the Jumbotron would light up and yell, make some noise. and everyone would scream at the top of their fucking lungs at the same time, 85,000 strong. So I'm no virologist, but if you want people to keep their mask on, don't yell, make some noise up on the Jumbotron. But also there was zero enforcement once you got into your seat. And also I would argue, but you tell me if this rings true for you. Let's just say the average commercial flight is 3.5 hours for the sake of argument. And let's just say the average NFL game is 3.5 hours for the sake of argument. The average flight, the beverage service starts an hour in, the beverage service lasts half an hour. Maybe you get a cocktail. Maybe you get some Fiesta mix. Not flying private like Mark over here, but when the little people have to go Southwest. The mask is probably legitimately down out of the 3.5. At least you could argue about 45 minutes, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, justified, mask down, sipping off the cocktail, eating the hummus box. The stadium, everybody in that stadium has a beer in one hand and a hot dog in the other. And if you ever run out of food, some dude's coming down the aisle with the Cracker Jacks, with the pretzels, with the peanuts, with the hot dogs, with the cold beers. There's literally, I sat there next to a couple of guys in the sanitation industry from like Arleta. Oh, we got to know each other. They each drank 4 beers, ate 3 hot dogs. There was no point where that mask was anywhere near up in place. So if you're going to put people in this area and you're just going to hand them endless beers and hot dogs, there's no way that mask is even pretending to move into place. So it's obviously it's all theater. It's all the ballet of the Tards, but that's where we're at.
I have not been inside of SoFi. Is it actually indoors, or would you classify it as an outdoor venue?
It is like, what would you classify a screened off porch? It's like,
I would call that outdoors.
Right. But somebody might call it indoors. Like
it's like a patio cover, basically.
It's like a giant pergola next to LAX.
Okay.
And no, but so I will tell you this.
It's outdoors, is it not?
Let me define that. It has a giant roof over the top of it, and then an opening underneath the roof, which makes it sort of indoor-outdoor. But just to put a finer point on it, during the lightning strikes of a Monday night football game, could have been Sunday night, could have been Thursday night, but probably Monday night football game of about 9-10 weeks ago, they delayed the game because it was an outdoor stadium. So technically, when force majeure comes into play, meaning they're classified somewhere as an outdoor stadium, because if you're in a dome, you don't have to stop play during a lightning strike, I do not believe. So if you want to know the actual classification of it, if you have to stop during a lightning storm, you might be classified as an outdoor stadium.
And so
Gary, you can look that up.
No, that's correct.
Yeah,
I watched
Gary,
the special.
I want to see if that.
No, that's correct. I watched the special on how they built it, and it is classified and considered to be an outdoor stadium. There is open air. There is air moving through from the outside on 2 or 3 sides at least. And the thing that's different about the game that you went to, theoretically, and the Super Bowl is that Barbara Ferrer said extensive outreach will be done to remind attendees to wear their masks at all times during the game, except when eating or drinking. And that as part of the restrictions, if anyone refuses to wear a mask after being told by facility staff, the offense could carry a $250 fine.
So your thoughts, Mark?
Well, I was telling, once again, Gary, when I was speaking with him, I had a discussion or a meet and confer with lawyers for the county, in which they told me, as recently as I believe the last 10 days, that there were no plans to reissue any restrictions on outdoors, because I was doing it in the context of restaurants. Well, this would seem to put the lie to that, would it not?
Yeah, although to be fair to them, they get to say whatever they want, whenever they want. You sit around with your logical brain and go, wait a minute, that's inconsistent. And they go, yeah, who the fuck cares? I say what I want. I do what I want by decree.
I decree, and I don't have to make a living. I mean, it's this kind of light switch on and off. If you're I've got a client who owns a restaurant who has installed a very high-tech air filtration system because she doesn't want to be in the business of policing people as to whether they're vaxxed or not. And that made me kind of the logic of it isn't that how we basically justify air travel? Because you're in this giant tube and you're 40,000 feet in the air, and you would think that would, and if you're there for 3.5 hours, you would think that the viral load would be such that you're going to, if somebody's got it, everybody's going to get it. And supposedly they have very sophisticated air filtration systems, which argues against that. Well, if that's the case and it's okay for air travel, one would think that we should mandate that for restaurants or indoors where you're going to be for an hour and a half or whatever it's going to be. Doesn't that make some sense?
Well, I'll tell you what doesn't make any sense is, and it flies in the face of logic and progress and technology and data, which is you take the guys, the guys who run the big three airlines, you put them up in front of Congress, and they say, there's no reason to wear a mask on a commercial flight because we have sophisticated air scrubbing devices. It's probably the safest place you can be. And then Fauci and the dingbat senators go, okay, but wear a mask anyway. Does anyone really realize the danger in that thought? Do you know what I mean? Because that's where we're at. It's kids aren't at risk, but shut the school anyway. Kids aren't at risk. Put a mask on anyway. There's a piece of lucite we hang in front of the librarian. It doesn't do anything, but put it up anyway. Do it anyways. Not a way to run a business or city or family or planet. You can't just fall under the decree of, well, it's an outdoor stadium, but put the mask on anyway, which is what we've slid into. We've slid into some malaise of like, well, outdoor hiking's safe and the schoolyards are safe and the basketball court's safe and the beach is safe, but and the volleyball court's safe and the skate park is safe, but just shut it anyway. There's a lot of that. And by the way, there's a version of that. That's what the city is. Many, many years ago, when I was doing earthquake rehab, probably in the mid to late 80s in like Koreatown, we were working on this old building from the 20s. Brick, 5-story brick. So you have to do all the earthquake rehab on those buildings. A real dirty job. We had a big problem with parking because it was like Koreatown. None of the buildings had subterranean parking or any kind of parking because they were built before you needed to build parking for the building. So you have
all these fight on the streets.
80-unit buildings and not one parking space in an 80-unit building, and there's 13 80-unit buildings. So you had to duke it out on the street. So we're showing up to do construction, and I would park. And they would always have this thing where it'd be street cleaner would show up between 10 a.m. and noon on Wednesday. And, of course, you'd get a ticket if you're on that side of the street. And anyway, one time it was about 11:45. It was no parking from 10 to noon. And I saw the fresh, wet street cleaner tracks had gone by. So I pulled my truck in, and a meter maid pulled up and said, I'm going to give you a ticket. And I said, why? And he said, no parking 10 a.m. to noon. And I said, for street cleaning. And the street cleaners clearly went by because you can see the wet tracks. By the way, it's a window for the street cleaners. They give him a 2-hour window. The guy came by at 11:30. Fine, now I'm parking here. He said, fine, I'm writing you a ticket. I said, why are we doing this? He said, because I can, because that's what's it. Once you start taking on that relationship with the city, you're fucked. And anyone who's opened a business and anyone who's trying to pull a permit and anyone who's dealt with the city knows that that's their attitude, because we can. And it is no different than the wet tracks on the street, parking, no parking, 10 a.m. to noon. It's exactly their mentality. They don't have to compete. They don't need your business. That's how it works. And that's what we're dealing with in Los Angeles. I imagine you wouldn't deal with that in Texas or Florida, but Los Angeles, that's what you get. It's a weird. A lot of it is an emotional condition. It's an adversarial relationship with taxpayers. Anyone who's gone in and tried to pull a permit or done anything to dealt with the city, it's not a neutral relationship. It's not a symbiotic relationship. It's you are trouble. What do you want? I got my eye on you, Buster. And it's carried, by the way, the mentality has carried straight through to all the COVID protocols. It's exactly the same.
The protocols now I had an example yesterday where somebody was asking me, they're doing business in Pasadena. The city of Pasadena has their own health department, and their health department does not have the same decrees or is not as strict as the county, even though Pasadena is a city in the county of Los Angeles. And this person was saying, what am I supposed to follow? Am I supposed to follow the city of Pasadena's edict, or do I have to follow the county's? Because there's clearly, and I won't get into the exact differences, but there's clearly a conflict between the two. My position is that the city of Pasadena would trump over the county because the city of Pasadena has their own health department. Interesting legal issue, but who knows how that would play out if you went to court.
All right, let me take care of a piece of business, and then I want to circle back on the mask mandate and the fines at SoFi, and then I'll also ask you about the DAs and the recalls and the Soros-backed DAs and all the sort of hubbub that's going on with all that throughout the country. First, I'll tell you about NordVPN, fastest VPN in the world. You don't even notice it's running. Switch your virtual location and bypass geo restrictions to access Netflix and other streaming platforms in up to 60 countries. Next generation encryption and a strict no logs policy protects you from hackers and snoopers. Public Wi-Fi, it's dangerous. It's a hotbed of hackers. NordVPN's end-to-end encryption protects you on the go. NordVPN saves you money, and you can find discounts in other regions of the world by switching your virtual location. You can pay less for subscriptions with NordVPN. Right, Gary?
That's right. Cyber Month deal. Go to nordvpn.com/doubt or use code doubt to get up to 73% off your NordVPN plan plus a bonus gift. The price drops down from $89 to $79 and you get one free month. So your total discount is 73%. Be quick because this offer is for a limited time only. It's equivalent to buying a cup of coffee every month, a small price to pay for premium cybersecurity and access to vast amounts of entertaining content. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee if NordVPN is not for you, so there's no risk.
All right.
Gary, before we move to that, Gary sent me, and I wanted to get Adam's thought on this, a question somebody asked the press secretary yesterday. You have it? There it is. Look at that.
Wow.
Let me ask you a couple other questions. Is there any scenario in which the president would select his vice president, Kamala Harris, for the Supreme Court?
Again, I'm not going to speak to any considerations, preparations, lists, and as we've stated earlier, and you heard the president say, there's a long history of Supreme Court justices determining when they may retire, if they retire, and announcing that. And we're going to, that remains the case today.
And until that question was asked, I hadn't even thought about that. But, in any other, if she was not vice president, she'd be on a short list for the U.S. Supreme Court, right?
I believe
Senator,
so, yeah.
Attorney General, DA, got the pedigree. They love ex-prosecutors, traditionally have loved ex-prosecutors. I've read a statistic somewhere about the number of ex-prosecutors on the courts or made for picks. Do you see a world in which and by the way, interestingly, I don't know how this would play out. If you need to have 51 votes, and she's the vice president, could she be the 51st vote to cast for herself to get confirmed?
Well, I don't know. Someone's going to have to head down to the border and get her out of there, man. I mean, she's ensconced. Ever since we made her border czar, she's 24/7 walking that border. Mexico, Texas, California, Arizona. So someone's going to have to alert her that there's work in Washington to do and strip her off that border and get her back out here. Get her.
I wonder, because her approval ratings are famously fairly low, and people are not. The chattering class is not. That I've seen at least screaming for her to run next time around, right? I mean,
right.
I don't see that as right. I don't see that any kind of a clamoring for her to run for president in 2024 if Biden does not. If that's the case, is that a move you could ever see? Do you see a move like that?
I think. Unfortunately, the optics are if Biden did nominate her, then it would be looked at as an excuse to get her out of her current job. And I think optically that's the problem. I think a lot of people have speculated for a while now that even before Breyer retired, that she could be nominated for the Supreme Court, but he would only do that to get her out of the White House. And I think those optics look bad at this point because it's a sort of admittance of failure. So I don't think he's going to do it simply for the optics, although I do believe he would like to get her out of there, but I don't think he's going to do it because of the optics. But I have a question as it pertains to her. And Gary, you can find her. I think somebody asked her, Savannah Guthrie, I think, was asking her about what she was going to do with COVID. And she said one of her crazy answers about doing what they're doing every day when they're doing it. But here's a bigger global question for you, Mark. You prepare clients all the time to be deposed. You prepare clients to give statements. You prepare clients to go up in front of the jury. You prepare clients. And it's going to vary from case to case depending on what the crime is right? And what they're being accused of. But you know, here's what they're going to ask about. Once in a while, if they're really good, they'll ask about something you didn't think about. But for the most part, you made your bones knowing what they were going to ask before they were going to ask it, and then you prepare that person to answer that question. Kamala Harris goes on news programs, and they ask her what's going on at the border, and she does not have an answer chambered. Now, I'm not blaming her for no answer. I am blaming her for no answer. I'm blaming her for no bullshit answer. Just have something chambered like you would prepare your client with some, stock kind of a universal statement about the border, because someone is going to say, have you been to the border? Or what's going on with COVID? Like, don't be caught off guard by a COVID question in the middle of a COVID outbreak when the administration said they were going to shut down COVID. Why does she seem off guard? And of all people, now as I think about it, as an attorney, do you know what I mean?
As a former prosecutor, I tend to think that's a failure of staff, and there's been some turmoil, has been reported at least, with her staff and their preparation and their kind of briefing of her. You've got in those kinds of jobs in the executive branch, you've got, I think, as famously described, if you read kind of the memoirs or biographies and autobiographies of people who've held the job, the amount of information that's coming at you is it's torrential. I mean, but you've got to have a good staff, and famously, that's why chiefs of staff are so vital to people in the executive branch. That's kind of their lookout. Their lookout is to make sure you're prepared, you know what you're doing, and that you've got kind of a focused or a laser-like focus on what you're going to do and what you're going to say and what your message is. And I think that's one of the reasons that she's been, at least as reported, dissatisfied with some of the staff that she has had. Wouldn't you agree? Because
I do, but it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing, which is, did you piss off the staff enough so that the staff went, well, go fucking hang yourself then? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm going to watch you dangle in the wind. Have fun. You're a bitch to me all the time and the doors are closed, and now you want me to help you, X, Y, and Z. So it may be the staff, but it also may be her relationship with the staff that may have started this enterprise, this trend of them not catching her up. You got it, Gary?
Yeah, unfortunately, it took a little longer because it's not Savannah Guthrie. It's Craig Melvin, who she's speaking to. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I've watched the clip. It's very much like what you described.
Okay.
Let's try
watch it. Oh, you're right.
Does the administration say, you know what, this strategy isn't working, we're going to change strategies? 6 former administration officials last week wrote that open letter urging the administration to change course, to change strategy. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down. And so right now we know we still have a number of people that is in the million.
That's you can tell what's happening there, can't you? That is just, I have no idea, and I'm going to just run out the clock. That's a very skilled way to string together words that have absolutely no meaning or import.
With an assist from my hands that are going to move like a David Byrne Talking Heads video from 1982. Yeah, there's the other one. There's the other one. Yes.
Can I watch that one more time? I mean, that's fascinating to me. And you
can look at the border one too, Gary, but yeah.
Does the administration say, you know what, this strategy isn't working, we're going to change strategies? 6 former administration officials last week wrote that open letter urging the administration to change course, to change strategy. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down. And so right now we know we still have a number of people that is in the million.
It really is a skill set. I mean, that answered the question with great feeling and kind of concern, and said absolutely nothing.
But what I'm saying is, if you were representing her and that was a deposition, wouldn't you kind of be standing out of the camera view,
Well,
shaking your head, going, what the fuck did we go over this for? Or why didn't we go over this? Like, this is...
We say, thank God the cross-examination was not, I don't know what the follow-up was, but, one of the questions that you might say is, when you say, if today is the time to change our strategy, what are you doing? Just ask the question. What are you doing to change the strategy?
She said
have
it's
an
not.
Answer for that.
She said it's not time to change the strategy. We need to do what we're doing when we're doing it.
With the toolbox that we have available, apparently.
Right, but what I'm saying is you're going to get a question like this. You say something like, there are always variations of COVID. We prepare for one, and then we get another. The last administration woefully inequitable, and left us with you blame the old administration for leaving you hobbled. You explain that you're playing catch up now, and then you talk about the children.
And then you you invoke the children. It would appear to be the 6 experts that he's referring to. We talked about it on a past episode. All talked about what the consequences have been by kinds of these policies that have just been adopted almost mindlessly. And one of the stock answers that you would have thought she would have given is, look, we're trying to wait for the pandemic to subside and the strains to become less virulent, so that we can get to an endemic that we can manage or control. We have to abandon this idea that we kind of put out there that we're going to flatten the curve, or we're going to eliminate the virus, or we're going to conquer the virus. Nobody's buying that 2 years in. So I don't know that this is something that would have required a whole lot of prep, because at a certain point, you just have to kind of understand that when you're talking to people, it's finally occurred, by the way, to those on my side of the aisle, that what we're doing makes very little sense, and that we've got to do. It doesn't mean you have to embrace the kind of the unthinking, but there does have to be some realization that you can't just go on endlessly or mindlessly like this, and that's a real problem. And I don't understand what it's going to take. Maybe it's unfortunate. Maybe it's going to take a slaughter at the polls for people to understand that. And when I say slaughter at the polls, that's the only thing that seems to get through to politicians, obviously, is an existential threat.
We have the border clip from several months back. But again,
just quickly put a button.
This is Lester Holt. Again, you're put in charge of the border. The border's a shit show, so you're going to get asked what's going on with the border. And all I'm saying is prepare an answer. Don't be caught off guard. But you tell me, again, picture this as a client of yours.
Right.
And
this is
their answer. Here we go.
Just quickly put a button. Okay. Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making. I'm not discounting the importance of the border.
Well, I mentioned it because I know Republicans have certainly come at you on this, but Democratic Congressman Cuellar has a border district.
We got it. Now, Mark, if you were standing off camera, you would break your pencil while you stood there, right?
There is a better answer than we've been to the border, not me, and I haven't been to Europe. I agree with you. I mean, and I don't. I have a little, more than a little. If I'm in charge of preparing her, or that's a client, you're not going to be jumping for joy. That was not exactly a hard-hitting interview by Lester Holt. He just asked the question, which, by the way, you know that everybody on the right is talking about that and has been saying that. I mean, all you have to do is turn on Fox News. It's not something that you don't know. So if you want to engage in the mental jujitsu with the person when you know the question's coming, there are some stock answers that you could have ready and available, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could, I wouldn't go into that interview without some sort of date that I was going to the border, at least to feed Lester Holt. You know what I mean? Like, it's coming soon. You know, the plane's gassed up. Number one. Exactly. Number two, I'd go, we have people at the border. I'm in close touch with those people. I get a briefing every day about what's going on at the border. Yeah, I could go to the border, but in a way, it's just sort of window dressing. It's like, you know, when the president shows up to look at the damage from the flood. You know what I mean? The real work takes place when he gets back to his office.
Right, and she knows, because he's also from California, the head of Homeland Security, or the people who are actually in charge there, and she could have invoked that person and said, right, I'm in constant contact with him, and I get daily briefings, and I understand what's happening there, and we've got a comprehensive plan to address this and make sure that we don't have that we're not detaining or splitting up families or detaining. I mean, there are a whole lot of things that you can say. And by the way, it is, you know, the border, for anybody who has been there, is a problem. And it's been a problem for a number of administrations. And by the way, deportation has been a problem for as long as I've been practicing criminal law, and the consequences of criminal convictions and what the impact they have on deportations. She knows that. I mean, that's what I think somebody should have said to her, look, you have the knowledge because you were a district attorney. You were the attorney general. You have the knowledge of what the border and deportation consequences are. So invoke that, or at least talk about that, because that's something you know, instead of what just happened there.
Last thoughts. Are the Republicans going to put up much of a fight against whoever the Supreme Court nomination is, or are they just going to look at it as sort of a push and maybe not like the optics of beating up on a woman of color?
I think if it's one of the three people that are bandied about right now, that whether it's Justice Kroger or the D.C. Circuit or the district court judge from South Carolina, I think
Leandra Kruger and Judge J. Michelle Childs are the other two.
I think that you're going to see, my prediction, probably a 53 or 54 vote confirmation, and that's all it's going to take. If you get 51, you're fine. So that's all it's going to be, and I think you're going to see that happen quickly. If they're smart, they'll do it quickly, just like the Justice Barrett was done very quickly as well.
But you don't think there's no chance of some Kavanaugh mudslinging fest that could go on?
I don't think that that's going to happen. I've seen nothing that makes me think that that's going to happen at this point.
But it does often happen. Is it an optics thing?
Oh, absolutely. What has happened, and a lot of people trace it back to when Robert Bork was nominated. And that marks, at least in the modern era, the beginning of kind of this food fight that generally happens when you get to the confirmation hearings. But, there generally what has happened is there's a vetting process of the candidates. They're doing right now, they're vetting them, just like when they do vet other kinds of appointments. And everybody generally knows, especially if you've gone through prior confirmations, which both the DC Circuit has recently. Gary, when was she nominated and confirmed? It was fairly recently, and I believe by 53 or 54 votes.
Gary says the frontrunner was recently confirmed through the Senate for her current job and was approved with some Republican votes as well.
Well, yeah, I think she got 2 or 3 Republican votes. So generally, they've already done some research on it because they know, like I say, when it's the D.C. Circuit, most people understand that that's a stepping stone to the U.S. Supreme Court.
All right. Last but not least, there's Geico. Do you rent your home? Well, you do one or the other. And I bet you work hard, too. Well, you know, it's easy getting your bundle going with Geico. You take your homeowners, your renter's insurance policy, and you bundle it up at Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renter's insurance along with your automotive policy. So go to geico.com, get a quote, and see just how much you could save and how easy it is when you get your bundle working. Visit geico.com. That is geico.com today. All right, you can see me and Bill Shatner and Dennis Quaid over at the Brea Improv coming up on the 6th.
Are you taping that?
Yeah, Truth Yeller, doing it with Shatner and Quaid. And then we got live shows, Spokane, Tacoma, Kansas City, Waukegan, Illinois. Just go to adamcarolla.com, and if you want to subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/AdamCarolla. What do you got, Mark?
I got, if you're in Palm Springs, stop by Gigi's, the restaurant that's at the V Palm Springs. If you're in San Clemente, stop by Casa Tropicana, Pierside Restaurant. New York City, go by Prova, either in Grand Central Terminal or in the Moxie Hotel in Times Square. And if you're in downtown LA, soon to be governed by the Rick Caruso is my prediction. Stop by 10E for Mediterranean tapas or Engine Company 28 for a little comfort food.
So until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying, Mahala.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.